Mental Health Week this week. Amazing. My favourite topic, mental health, confidence, self-esteem, all of that. I get to have a conversation with amazing people who know what they're talking about, who've got a point of view, who are going to share with you their wisdom, their experience. They're going to share it all with you. Come with me to the studio. Today I'm going to be speaking to Kandy, so please listen out to what her takeaway is.
I'm Kandy Holgate. I am an empowerment coach, and I empower people to have the best relationships they can with themselves first, and that is obviously the most important relationship of all.
Kandy, what does mental health mean to you when we're looking at relationships?
Mind, the mental health charity, have found that 1 in 4 people in the UK will suffer from mental health. Some form of mental health, and that is a huge and staggering amount. And clearly a lot of those people are going to be also functioning in relationships, whether it be a romantic relationship, children, family, work. It's a huge topic. So for me, the really important thing about understanding how mental health can affect you in relationships is understanding the space within the relationship and how people are communicating within it. If, say, for example, you're thinking about a particular topic, let's say sleep, for example, and for you might think to yourself, I've got an issue with sleep, but that could be different to somebody else. For somebody who's not sleeping well, it could be we haven't slept for 2-3 weeks. Somebody else, it could be just 1 day. So it just really is about making sure that when you're communicating in relationships, everybody really understands what the other person is saying. So communication really is absolutely key here.
Thank you, Kandy. And what would you say to any of our listeners if they are living, their partner, their husband, their wife has got some form of mental health that is affecting their day-to-day life? How can the other person in the relationship who loves them and cares about them, how can they best support them when maybe the other person doesn't even know?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Ife. And I think the thing here, the difficulty is when you're talking about a relationship and somebody you care about, we as humans have this tendency to want to fix things and to find a solution to things. Mm-hmm. And that really is not the answer at all. So I think it's for the person who perhaps is feeling that they have an issue with mental health to be really clear about expressing how exactly they're feeling, and their loved one being able to actually listen and listen actively rather than try and compartmentalize what they're saying, put it into a box and then think, okay, based on that, I have a solution. So this is when it's going to be really important to practice active listening. And that is really taking the time to hear what your loved one is saying, and then also use paraphrasing, for example, because what that will do will check understanding. So if, for example, if you said to me, Kandy, you know what, I feel fine today. Yeah, I feel fine. I would ask you to articulate, what does fine mean to you, Ife? Tell me what fine means. Fine can mean, yesterday I felt awful, today I feel less awful, so that's fine. So then, but that doesn't mean that there isn't still something that we can elaborate on and try to get to the root of what is going on. So communication, open communication without assumptions is what's going to be key in relationships to try to help your loved one to deal with anything that may be happening.
Wow, and that's so important. So really what you're saying is that we as human beings, we need to become a little bit like psychotherapists. We have to follow their principle. We have to understand that when we are dealing with a partner with mental health, we all have mental health. So it could be that we need help, they need help. So we have to learn how we can best support them. And it's not always putting a plaster on top and sending them on their way.
Precisely.
But that is our natural instinct to go, I'm going to help you, I'm going to fix you, I'm going to tell you what to do. But
exactly.
You're saying no, active listening.
I'm saying active listening. And also, if you think about it, we have to take into account culture as well. So we have so many different cultures just living in the UK where we are. And, you know, so let's take depression, for example. Depression may not be recognised we might be recognised differently from one culture to another. So we need to understand what that actually means in our relationship, not what our culture says, not what society says, not what our friends say. We need to sort of be really clinical about trying to understand for that loved one we need to find out exactly what they are feeling, not based on any labels and preconceived ideas that we may already have.
Kandy, I've been speaking to so many different professionals, and one of the ladies I was speaking to, she specifically works with children. And I'm wondering if one of the techniques that she mentioned, whether you think it would work with adults. She said when you're working with a child who is displaying behaviours of anxiety, depression or detachment, the best thing to do as the parent is to sit down with them and ask them, what do you need me to do? How can I help you be okay? What do you need from me? And I know as parents, it's sometimes difficult because you think that you need to give the answers. So in a relationship, would it work if your partner or your husband or your wife was struggling and you could see that they maybe didn't want to leave, or they were stomping around the house because they're upset about going to work, or you could see there's something wrong? Do you think it's okay to go up to them and say, what do you need, or not?
Absolutely. I absolutely do, Ife, because yes, I agree completely with what you're saying with children. But then if you think about it, when we are nurturing our children, I've got 2 adult children, they're both in their 20s now. And I communicate with them in the same way now as I did when they were children, because we're just teaching them how to communicate through their lives and ultimately as adults. So if we're practicing what you've just described as active listening, if we're practicing active listening by asking our children and then also our loved ones, tell me what you need, we're giving them the opportunity to let us know and try their best to articulate how they're feeling. Because unless they tell us, how will we know how we can help them? So I absolutely agree that speaking to them and asking them, what is it that I can do to help you is the perfect thing to do. And bear in mind as well, in a relationship, particularly a romantic relationship, if, you know, we sometimes feel that we should be playing a certain role, you know, within that relationship. So, you know, stereotypically, you should be working this, that, you should be keeping all these old stereotypes, you know, about what you should be doing in relationships, which we know now, can often cause a lot of issue and a lot of anxiety. So I think if we're able to break those down and just go back to grassroots, i.e., what can I do to help you? Forget what you think you should be doing. Forget what you think I think you should be doing. Just let me know what I can do to help you. How can I help you? And I think that definitely is absolutely the best advice. And do bear in mind, if your partner, again, because of these preconceived ideas that we have that they should be playing a certain role, if they push back and they're like, no, I'm fine, I'm okay, don't give up there. Just keep gently going on, because bear in mind, it's frightening. Some people are embarrassed, some people are fearful, some people don't.
Very vulnerable.
Definitely.
Either whether it's the man or the woman, I find that it's you're putting yourself in a very vulnerable situation. But how does the person who wants to help, who lacks confidence and who's a bit afraid of the answer, you could go and ask your loved one, how can I help you? But you might not want to, because you might not want them to tell you how you can. They might say, I need a week off work, which means that we're going to have less money coming in. That's how you can help me, by taking double shifts. Or you could help me by taking the children to school and actually starting work later and finishing later. But I wonder if sometimes we do know to ask, how can I help you? You know, if you see someone with loads of heavy bags,
yes,
and you've got heavy bags, even if you wouldn't ask them, how can I help you? Because they might say, can you take some of my bags? So sometimes we don't ask, not because we don't know how, but maybe because we don't want to.
And yeah, I think that could be fear, Ife, because obviously we can definitely experience fear of the unknown in any circumstance. So in coaching, what we do is we encourage people, if they're looking at a goal or want to change something, we encourage them to break it down. We call it chunking it down. So I appreciate completely what you're saying, in that it might be frightening to ask somebody, how can I help you, for fear of the answer, if the answer appears to be too big. Yeah. So what we will do is we'll chunk that down and think, right, okay, you're at a 5 today. What would a 6 look like? You know, make small steps. And then what will a 7 look like? So it's not too much of an issue or too frighteningly scary for either party. So we're keeping it manageable, measurable, but still progressive. Does that make sense?
That totally makes sense. And I think that's where communication can happen. Because I think people might be sitting there thinking, with the busy world that we live in,
yes.
and the exchanges and the transactions that we have in our relationships, because
yes.
every morning there's a rush to get out the door, if you've got
yes.
children, pets, walking, whatever. When is the best time to have that conversation where you say to, if it's you or them, get to have the conversation where you say, how can I help? When? Should they arrange it? Or does that create anxiety? We need to talk. You know, when we get home, we need to have a conversation. Or on Sunday, we're going to have a conversation. How do we start those conversations when it's something that hasn't really fit in the routine? What advice would you give to people listening who say, I like what you're saying, Kandy. That sounds great. When do I do that? Should I do it now? Right now? Should I call him in or call her in?
Okay, so again, with communication is two-way, okay? It's two-way. So it needs to be, if I want to communicate with you, I need to make sure that I am in a position to express to you what I feel, and also at a time when you're able to hear me. That's the thing. So if in the morning or in the evening or whatever time it is, because we have very, very different schedules now. So it's for the parties concerned, the people concerned, to think, right, okay, when do we find that we are most relaxed? I certainly wouldn't want to speak to, a loved one of mine if they just got home and they were hungry, because they're not going to be very receptive. They're going to be, perhaps their blood sugar's down, they're just a little bit anxious or a bit agitated. So we need to choose a time, and that's going to be different for everybody, but it's about observing. So if you're not sure when to speak to your partner, observe for a couple of days when you see them most receptive and open, and not just to answer questions about day-to-day things. When do you find their imagination coming out a little bit? Is it, after dinner? Is it on the weekend? Whenever. It could be any time, because our schedules, as I said, are very, very different now. So just observe for a couple of days and think, I see when they seem to be most relaxed. I see when they start to come out with ideas, which suggests that their mind is more open. So, and choose a time like that.
That's when I'm going to pounce. I'm only joking.
No, you're not. You're going to just read the situation, and you're going to just, like we said, where are you now? You're a 4. Okay, well, what would a 5 look like? And that's the first step. Keep it manageable so that nobody needs to feel frightened, and it's not too big a subject to deal with. We're keeping it manageable, small steps, one foot in front of the other to start off with, and get the dialogue going about how you can increase your communication. And that ultimately will empower the relationship and empower you as individuals as well.
So Kandy, thank you so much. What is your takeaway that you can give our listeners today?
So my takeaway, and thank you very much for having me, Ife. My takeaway for the listeners today is try to practice active listening. And by that, I mean listening to hear and not to respond.
Love that. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
Pleasure, Ife.
Take
Bye.
care.